Allow me to invite David, who is already at the podium, to invite the Honorable Minister to give his remarks before we proceed. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. We are pressed for time. The Honorable Minister has to be somewhere, so please, Honorable Bahati, the floor is yours.
The ED of Mkutano, David Ofunji, the President of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Madam Olive, the private sector, I have heard the Bankers Association, and all of you participants, good morning. First, I want to thank you, David, and the team for organizing this dialogue with the private sector on issues to do with green economy, sustainable industrialization, and other areas that bring together the private sector with government to see how to improve on the policies that we are put in place. So I'm very grateful that you invited us as a ministry. Honorable Mwewesa was supposed to be here this morning, but he sends his apologies. But we are here as a ministry to really support you and the work that we are doing. I'm glad that the dialogue will focus on sustainable economy, will focus on the cost of doing business, namely the cost of capital, the cost of electricity. I hope you'll also help us talk about the other cost, which is corruption, how you can help government to fight corruption, because corruption brings the cost of doing business up, and also issues to do with green energy, green economy. I'll just reflect again on the fact that the role of government is to create an environment where the private sector can flourish. That is our role. And I want to remind you that as NRM government, one of the things that we are doing to help the private sector flourish is to have a peaceful and secure environment where you can operate. So peace and security remains key in improving the environment where you can operate. The other role that we are playing as a government is to put infrastructure in place. For example, we have committed ourselves for the next 5 years. We are going to put 22 industrial parks in all areas of regions of Uganda, so that you can find well developed industrial parks. You don't have to take a lot of time in trying to develop infrastructure in these industrial parks yourselves. So the government is going to develop facilitated industrial parks, 22 of them in the next 5 years. And we are beginning with one at Namave, which started a long time ago, but we're investing almost 240 million euros to make sure that we have enough water, internet, we have sewage system, we have all infrastructure needed in those industrial parks. So that is our role, and that's what we are doing. And as we develop these industrial parks, we also know that we have passed the green economy policy in addition to the industrial policy, and therefore in all these industrial parks we'll take care of that aspect of the green economy. The second one is electricity. At the moment, we have been able to develop electricity, to develop the dams, Kaluma Dam, Isimba Dam. We are now at 1,800 megawatts. And in the cabinet, we are discussing how much more power can we put in place to be able to facilitate the private sector. And some of the leading factors we are looking at is looking at other economies. For example, Iceland, small population of 300,000, has 42 megawatts. You have seen what is happening in our brothers and sisters in South Africa because of lack of power. Our population now stands at 43 million. And in 2050, Uganda will be having a population of 100 million. At the moment, the East African community has a population of close to 400 million, Africa 1.2 billion. In 2050, Africa will be 2.5 billion. So population is a key factor in developing electricity, but also looking at our mineral resources. For example, we have 312 million tons of iron ore in the region where I come from, Chigezi. If you had set up 3 factories to develop the steel factory, you need 1,000 megawatts, meaning that the megawatts we have, 1,800, can be consumed by only two factories. So we are looking now at the energy policy, and we had started discussing maybe in the next 10 years we'll need 42 megawatts, but we put up a committee to see, really looking at the population, looking at developing these industries, the needs of the private sector. How much power shall we need in the next 10 years? So our role is to make sure that we have enough power and have it in affordable sense to develop your industries. And we still remain committed that we reduce the cost of power, cost of electricity for manufacturing to close to 5 cents for you who are in manufacturing. We are developing the road infrastructure so that when you produce your goods as a private sector, you can easily transport these goods. And we are doing very well, because now you can move from Koboko in the north of the country to the south of the country on a tarmac road. And we have also identified a number of industrial roads to develop. We are also going to embark on the standard gauge railway and the meter gauge to help facilitate and reduce the cost of transportation. The biggest challenge, where I think the private sector and the Bankers Association is here, you can help us, is to reduce the cost of capital. We still don't believe that, given the environment we're in, the fact that we have reduced areas of risk, which you always complain about, that the cost of credit should remain at 21–22%. That's too high, given that most of the businesses that we are doing in the country, the internal rate of return is in the region of 14 to 15%. So how will somebody really pay money back to the bank if the rate is 21%, 22%? Government, we are doing our own part in terms of investing in the Uganda Development Bank. We invested 481 billion in the last 2 years. We hope that we will continue to grow it so that we can support you, the private sector. And Damal talked about the issue of tax regime. It's our policy to support the import substitution and export promotion strategy. We now say if you produce something here, you should be protected by putting a tax on imports. So the tax regime is being used as a tool to support the private sector. And of course, helping you identify some of the opportunities like exploration of minerals. As we speak now, we have 12.3 trillion of gold in the ground, worth 12.3 trillion US dollars of gold. As I told you, we have 312 million tons of iron ore in the region. So the mineral sector is there for you also to invest in as a private sector. And the role of government is to do preliminary identification of these opportunities for you, so that you can invest as the private sector. So we still believe that the private sector is the engine of our growth. We remain the driver as government, and we are going to continue doing our part. We also count on you to do your part. And because government and the private sector have been working together, we've seen growth of factories. For example, in 1986, we had 186 factories, only 186 factories. And in a single generation, it has been able to grow from that figure to now 8,604 factories. We are now knocking down the import bill. For example, we can no longer import tires. We have enough tires produced in the country. Pharmaceuticals. There are great areas to support pharmaceuticals as a private sector. Starch, they are using close to 80 million. The 30 companies which are here use close to 80 million US dollars of starch, and yet we can develop this from cassava. So there are great opportunities, and because we are working together, the private sector and government, we are seeing growth in terms of the things that we are producing here. But we are cognizant of the fact that as we grow the economy, as we grow in industrialization, this industrialization must be sustainable. The issue of environment must be at the core of all our policies. And therefore, His Excellency the President will be making a major speech on environment in a few weeks from now to tell the country how we should protect our environment, stop destroying the wetlands. Like now, we no longer are going to allow any factory to be put up in wetlands because we need this environment. And also, as I told you, we want green industrial parks. So as we develop the 22 industrial parks, we want to make sure that they are green. We want to make sure that the factories which are being set up have green technologies to make sure that the economy is sustainable. So we look forward, David, at the end of this dialogue, I hope we'll be able to come up with some document, some ideas that government can pick and implement. Because I think Africans, we are fond of talking and talking. We are very good at conversing. We hope that really we focus, this dialogue focuses on actionable points. So what are those things that you need government to take action on? Can we have a document out of this Mkutano so that we can progress it? I really want to thank you for inviting us to be part of this, and thank all of you for coming. And you'll excuse me, I'm one of the last generals in the fight against COVID, but I'm also soon putting off the mask in a few weeks' time, but for today, I kept it on so that I can protect all of you. Thank you so much, and God bless you.